Margaret Sukkali, a thought from you, if you would.
Yeah, let me take a very practical example. We have our by far biggest plant in Germany, chemical industry, BASF. We now have a very, very big investment, 1 billion euros. When we made this decision to bring this investment to Germany, we had a little bit a different environment with respect to energy costs. It was a little bit, I think, before the shale gas boom really realized. And I still wonder today, I mean, sure, we have very, very skilled workers. We have a very good infrastructure. We have raw material available. However, now with the shale gas boom, I sometimes wonder whether this investment would still be in Germany. And I mean, I also explain that always to our employees. I say, you know, we do, whenever we have a new investment, we make a calculation based on numbers. And certainly also reliability, environment, regulation, all this plays a significant role. But unfortunately, I have to say, the balance is shifting at the moment. And since we made this decision to build this 1 billion plant in Ludwigshafen, it's, by the way, producing foams which you need for furniture. We are more or less sitting on this. So there's a big market, new people who are able to buy things, furniture, cars, and so on, mainly in Africa, mainly in Eastern Europe, but still, even with higher transportation costs, the decision would probably be different today. And since then, we have made decisions. The commissioner just said it. Houston is by now a very busy place. And I have to admit, we are also very busy in Houston, not in Houston, in Texas. Yeah.
Okay, so that underlines the scale of what impact this profound change that Maria was talking about would have on future decisions, even if you can't undo past ones. We'll come back on that. Theo, a thought from you in terms of the scale of this challenge, and do you agree with the others when they talk about, finally, we're coming to pragmatic solutions, we are getting away from the mistakes of the past. Are we on the right track now, do you think?
Well, first of all, I think it is one of the greatest challenges, together with jobs and job creation for our future. Europe is still one of the largest economies, larger in terms of GDP if you look at a world scale than the VS, the United States. Manufacturing is for a very long time neglected by politicians, not enough focus on it, very much on service industries, but it's being rediscovered. And I'm very happy, therefore, also, Commissioner Tajani has taken this initiative. But then the point, will you say, if manufacturing is really at the heart, why is then the climate policy and the energy policy not in sync with this industry policy, if we want to create it? I feel we are not taking the right measures. If we still look at the climate challenge and the European trading system, the ETS system, that is one size fits all. It is putting intensive energy industries in a competitive disadvantage because it's a global market. It will cost billions and billions of shortages of CO2 rights, what we will have. And China doesn't have to pay that. For example, in the steel industry, 50% is produced in China, only 9% here in the EU. We are much more competitive than we think. Also, the CO2 emissions per ton of steel are less, and still we are penalized. Whilst we are at the base front of important supply chains like automotive, like the construction industry, like mechanical engineering. So I don't think that's a good thing. Also, the industry takes its own initiatives by being innovative, new processes where we can have 20% less CO2 emissions, but that is not really supported by the European Commission. In other words, we are importing CO2 and exporting jobs if we don't change that more fundamentally. And I think that's very important because still the industry is very innovative. It is in the base front of those supply chains. So I would really plead for a much more a policy, a tailor-made policy, not one size fits all, and, for example, also come to a better conclusion and alignment with the climate and the energy prices, because there's also there a huge differences in it as well.
Thank you very much. Maria, if I could ask you to react to what you've heard, and particularly in this context of whether Europe is on the right track, because we heard there a plea. We've heard a lot of encouragement, in a sense, for the direction in which the EU is going. I think many of you wishing to push it further. But one of the things Business Europe calls for in its Industrial Compact recommendations is we need to get better balance, and it goes back to your point. Cost competitiveness, security of supply, climate goals. Indeed, you hear many in industry saying, we don't really have an energy policy. We have a climate policy, and energy is the sort of orphan of the climate policy. Would you agree that that may have been the case in the past or not? And do you think, when you look at what the Commission is proposing now, are we on the right track now, do you think?
First answer is quite simple, yes. And I think things need to change, and things can be changed. I would like to mention just a few of them. One, we were talking about the ETS system. We have seen an ETS system that in the beginning, well, it had a result. It was not that it didn't function at all. It had its result. But if you really want to have a good ETS system that is sustainable, then you need to have a built-in sustainability. Otherwise, it doesn't work. My second remark is about the renewables. You know, we are not an advocate for any fuel. But renewables are part of the picture, and we need renewables to have a sustainable energy future. But on the other hand, what we can see in Europe is now a kind of competition when it comes down to subsidies for renewables. That's not okay, it doesn't work. And you know, the point is, if you really want to make use of renewables on a European scale, you need to invest in trans-European electricity networks, so that we can use the Greek or the Italian or the Spanish sun somewhere else, and that we can use the North Sea wind somewhere else, and not try to, well, as it was mentioned by the Commissioner, and he was quite right in that, to build valleys complete with solar panels when the sun is not enough. So I think this kind of bringing together energy policy and climate policy is absolutely necessary, because, you know, we can't do without energy. And at the same time, when you look into CO2 emissions, energy infrastructure is responsible for the greater part of CO2 emissions. So you have to take into account what happens in the energy to find a solution for the climate. And at the same time, if you forget the third part of your triangle, these people, it won't work. It won't work without industry. So I think we need a real comprehensive approach.
Thank you. I'll come out to all of you shortly, but just on this question of targets, because Fulvio there, you made reference to the one headline target. We now have a proposal for the emissions reduction target. There is also a subsidiary target that relating to renewables, where they say at least 27% of energy consumption should come from renewables, but they're not going to set targets at member state level. And the third element, energy efficiency, which Herman Van Rompuy described last night as the cheapest form of energy, is the energy you don't use. But they have said we will leave this now until after the review of the Energy Efficiency Directive. Just in terms of those targets, do you think they are on the right track in terms of this one headline target? And I want to go back to this point that was raised by everybody so far today, and Emma started off when she said, we can't be the lone outrider, the lone front runner anymore. What implications would you rather see this debate put off until after there's an international agreement? Or is the EU right? The Commission says we need to put down our marker now. We need to show leadership now. It's a bit chicken and egg. Which way round do we do it? So a thought, anyone, on the targets? Have they got the right balance now? And what do we do about the international situation? Do we wait? Ulrich, you wanted to come in first.
I think the direction of one target, one greenhouse gas target is the only way. And all the other targets, all the other goals will follow. That's no question about that. And we need a European target and a strategy for all 27 states. Yeah? So there's no use, of course, as a German, I'm talking about our German politicians. It doesn't make any sense if we have there one GHG target, and then we in Germany we find some other targets and make more. As always, we won't always make a little bit more, so it doesn't make a sense. We need one integrated European climate policy, and of course one integrated European energy policy, and that's a goal we always mention. So I can yes to everything we said before, although it's boring. One point which affects me and affects especially Germans, still the affordable climate change, the affordable energy prices, that's the most important point. And you mentioned the 22 billion Deutschmarks we are paying, you know, euros, sorry. It's even more, even more. Oh, just, we paid the last year 24 billion euros for renewable energies,
Yep.
which was the worst at the stock exchange, was only 2 billion. So that's 22 billion we paid for renewables. The economy paid 50% of it, more than 10 billion, and all the private customers. So this money only for renewables, and that's not the right way to overlap for the future.
So
yeah?
what do you think the implication of this EU-wide target on renewables but no national targets will be? Fulvio?